Welcome to Mysterious Goings On, the podcast about creativity, writing, and mystery. Every week, we talk about all kinds of great fiction and meet the people who write it. We also feature explorations about creativity in all walks of life. Your host, Alex Greenwood, will join you right after this.
Hi, this is Priyanka Lalwani, composer of the film The Strange Guest. And you are listening to me on the podcast Mysterious Goings On with the awesome host, Alexander Greenwood.
Joann Keder spent most of her years in the Midwest, kind of a place near and dear to my heart, growing up and raising a family on the Great Plains of Nebraska. Oh, we have some more things in common here. I'll have to ask her about this. She worked for 16 years as a piano teacher. That's something of note, before returning to school to receive a master's degree in creative writing. A midlife move to the Pacific Northwest and the life-threatening illness of her husband caused her to re-examine her priorities. She now creates stories about life and relationships in small towns, while her ever-patient husband encourages her on. She's an award-winning author. She currently has 9 novels and 7 short stories available on Amazon. And you, dear listener, have her right here in your dear little ears. Joann Keder, welcome to Mysterious Goings On.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate having you on. Okay, first of all, I've got to get this out of the way. Okay, I've lived in the Midwest most of my life, and I lived in Nebraska for a time. What part?
Very western part. I lived in Scottsbluff.
Oh, okay. So Chadron is the farthest you can go, right?
Chadron is north, yeah, and we were a bit south of Chadron, so right on the Nebraska-Wyoming border.
I mean, it's beautiful country. I used to work at Peru State College on the other end of the state, and Chadron, right, was a sister college, and we would go out there for meetings every now and then. And I mean, it's just an expanse.
It's a trek. Yeah. There's an old joke about putting the club. Do you remember the club they used to have putting the club on your car in Omaha and just leaving it there all the way through the state, because there's not a lot to. Yeah, it's pretty open.
I can remember making that. I worked for the president of the college, and I drove the whole way with him, and he was my boss, and not a bad guy, really, but it was like a long time to be on my toes in that long drive. I can tell you that. Sure. Man, Joann, but you did leave. You moved on and went to the Pacific Northwest, and let's just get right to it. I wanted to ask you: did the change of scenery inspire you further into the writing, or did it inspire you in a different way?
Initially, no. Initially, I just fell off the cliff and crashed because I was hoping that I would find a job right away, and that didn't happen. We moved during the recession, and I struggled to make friends. In the Midwest, we have a little different sense of humor, and that was not appreciated here. I just fell right off that cliff, and then I ended up having an injury and being stuck at home for most of a year, and so I was in a great, big, ugly depression. And I said, well, I'll go outside when it stops raining. And if you know anything about the Pacific Northwest, that's about an 8-month time frame. So I sat in my closet a lot of days. But what really changed for me was when my husband was out hiking and he had this massive heart attack. And let me preface this by saying that I've always said I'm gonna write that book later. Later, when whatever happens, then I'll write my book. And my husband had this massive heart attack. He had to be life flighted in. He died 6 times. And I'm sitting by his hospital bed and listening to the machines that were keeping him alive. And suddenly it dawns on me, well, when is it that I am going to write the book? When I don't know if I have tomorrow. I only have today for sure. So that was my impetus to start writing again. And during his recovery, I wrote my first full-length novel, The Story of Keela. And I thought, and even then I went, oh, no, just one book, done, move on. And once I finished that, I realized I'd unleashed a beast, and I really wanted to continue. So that's where I am today.
Well, that's the difference between bucket list writers and people who I think are born or called to be writers. I have a few friends who, especially easily now with Amazon and Create Space and all that, you can write a book, good, bad, or indifferent, and put it out there and then check that box. When it becomes, and I'm using this word about me, necessarily not you, you can agree or disagree, but when it becomes something of a compulsion to tell stories, and compulsion sounds like a negative and nasty word, and I don't mean that, but I do feel compelled, how about that?
Yes.
Right, and to tell stories. You thought, okay, I'll cross that off my list. How long did it take you again before you went, I'm itching to do some more of this after the first one?
I think it was after the publication of the first one, because I get a lot of positive feedback from people. And this is a whole different topic, but my parents were finally supportive of me and seeing me as a productive human being. And that was something too. But I mean, that's not a reason to write 9 novels, but everything was a piece. Everything was a little piece. We
probably have more in common than you might think, and about certain things. And part of every book I've ever written, and I've written 8.5 novels basically, and some other stuff. I think part of me though was also to kind of say, here, validate me a little bit. Maybe it's not what I meant, but I think it has to be part of it. And Joann, do you get what I'm saying there?
Absolutely. And that's why, and they say, your first novel is mostly autobiographical. And of course, for years, no, that doesn't necessarily have to be true. And now I look back at that first book and I think, oh yeah, that is me. Yeah, those parts are me.
What did you say on your website? What is that Eleanor Roosevelt quote on your website that I just adore? You remember off the top of your head?
Sorry, I'm drawing a complete blank.
No, it's okay. I'm going to find it for you because I just shared it on Twitter before we went. This is so true, and it's so revealing, I think. Eleanor Roosevelt said, the reason that fiction is more interesting than any other form of literature to those who really like to study people is that in fiction, the author can really tell the truth without humiliating himself.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I tweeted that and said, who, me? Bryan Cranston, a little clip from him saying that. But it's true, Joann, isn't it?
Yes.
That first book is, and I mean, mine is almost painfully so. And it's the beginning of an 8-book series. So it's not like I can get rid of it, or it's not that I don't like it, but I got to admit, it is sometimes a little uncomfortable how much what you just said is true. But I've embraced that over the years.
Right. And that may just be, that just may be your tunnel vision saying, this is me, and other people are not seeing that at all, because this is still a very good selling book for me. And I even had somebody contact me, a kind of a short tail relative that I haven't seen in at least a decade. She said, oh, you wrote this about me, didn't you? And I went, okay, sure. If you see yourself in there, fantastic.
I get that so much. Do you get that a lot though? Just like, I always get this when they always pull me aside. So that character, she's me, right? I'm like, oh, yeah, you bet.
I've only ever written one character who was based on an actual person. I take bits of personality from people. Yeah. You Frankenstein it, you make your own being. But there was one person, I don't know if I should even tell this, but I did a novella for my master's thesis in college, and it's called The Something That Happened in Pepperville, and now it's part of this series. And the gist of this book was that the people all lived in a small town. We don't say where the small town is, but they were afraid to leave, so they spent their lives within the borders of this tiny town, and so they kind of created their own reality. And one of the characters was an exercise teacher who got all of her information from these old VHS tapes. But she made it seem as though she'd had some training and she knew what she's doing. But like the Jane Fonda workouts are way outdated, and a lot of the stuff we know now is dangerous to do. So there was actually a woman in my town who did the exact same thing, and she would just say things, tell you to do bizarre things, and we all took it to heart because we thought, well, we don't know anything, she must know what she's doing. She did not know what she was doing. So how can you not make that person a character?
I have a friend who is good at observing people, and he had a neighbor who had a child who for whatever reason tended to do his business on the front lawns of people he did not like. Well, that's in one of my books. I couldn't resist, and it works. It works, because like you, and this is one reason I was so excited to meet you, because like you, my stuff takes place in small towns. And I'm dying to ask you, Joann, what is it about small towns as a writer? I think part of it for me was it's a shortcut because a small town is manageable. If it takes place in a huge universe, it's tougher, but there's got to be more than that, right?
Absolutely. So I'm going to say the first thing is you write what you know. And I spent my entire life up until we moved to the Pacific Northwest in a small town. So I know how that operates. I know how it works. And I'm not trying to say this in a derogatory manner, but there are very strange people, very, very unique people. Let me just say that you don't necessarily find in a city. And it's just a gold mine for experiences. And what I love the most is that no matter how bizarre the situation seems, people just they're very honest about it, and they just don't see anything strange about it. And I love that. And so you can just have so much more depth to your characters, I think. And it doesn't mean that people from big cities aren't interesting, but honestly, people from small towns are unique.
They are.
So,
I was a small town newspaper editor too. And when I was very young, when I was 20s, my early 20s, I was unprepared for the sheer level of strange that, I mean, we had a dog catcher who would call women in town at night and disguise his voice. This was back in the 90s. Okay. So it's easier to do, that's back when you could do the Prince Albert in a can. And, he was, but I mean, I did a whole feature on this guy, what a great dog catcher he was. And then we find out 3 months later, yeah, and he's also a breather. So,
yeah, that so fits the personality of everybody has a backstory, and each one is stranger than the last. And I've told some of those stories to people here, and they kind of look at me like I'm making it up. If I can't tell these stories, then I'll make them into my own book.
Let's talk about your books. Pepperville. Okay, now Pepperville, Iowa. Okay, tell me about this. The series encompasses 5 decades, and you use this word, not me, quirky town of Pepperville. Tell us about it.
My novella that I wrote for my master's thesis was The Something That Happened in Pepperville. And the something that happened, well, I better not tell you, but that's where I based my first full-length novel, was in Pepperville. And the young woman has to leave in order to collect her inheritance. So she leaves Pepperville and drives 12 hours away to another really small, quirky town. But it was such a fun thing to create. And I love also to have a backstory of this happened 100 years ago, and this is why this is going on now. So it was really a fun thing to create this little odd community. Pepperville takes place in the 80s, and then Keela takes place in the 90s and current day. And then the next book takes place in the 60s and 70s. And then we've got one, I say today, but actually Keela was written in the last decade, believe it or not. So I've got another book coming out in hopefully a couple months that will take place in current day.
And so does Pepperville kind of take the place of Nebraska for you then?
If I say that, I'm going to have some people upset with me. So let's just pretend that it's Iowa.
Well, and it's much more Midwestern than, say, Piney Falls, Oregon, which, of course, come on,
Correct.
we all have a good idea why Piney Falls Mysteries takes place in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, that's where you live.
Right.
Is that just one book, Piney Falls?
Oh, no, there's five books in that series.
Wow. My goodness. Let me just go through the list here a little bit here. I want to make sure we mention everybody, and we'll put links in the show notes. Listeners, do not jump off your treadmill. I know you're driving and you want to pull over. mgopod.com, it's all there, or check your show notes. Emery Being Mysteries. Now this interests me very much, Joann. Bite-sized stories you can read in a couple of hours. Tell us about that.
So I was looking at the where the deficits are in the reading world, and it seemed as though people wanted more stories they could just read in an afternoon, because everybody's so busy now. They just don't have the time or the mental energy to invest in a full-length book. So I created the series of short mysteries, and they're not like, they're not going to make you go, wow, this is classic literature. It's just for fun. These are really, really fun, silly, short stories, and each one leads into the next. And eventually I'm going to write a few more of those, because I do have a few more ideas. But for now, they're just, it's Emery and her cousin Pickle are trying to find out which relatives have the information they need to inherit their great aunt Bing's fortune.
And when you finish each story, there is a recipe.
Correct. Yes. And I collected these from friends and relatives and had a little bit of a contest to see which recipes everybody enjoyed the most. So yes, well vetted recipes.
All right. And now your newest series is the Charming Mysteries, right? And it's set in a fictional town of Charming, Oregon.
Yes.
What's this all about?
So this is also a place, a deficit in the reading world, and that's detective who is retired. A woman, I'm going to say a retired woman. So this lady doesn't set out to be a detective, but the events in her life and her husband's illness cause her to try and find the reason that he's not getting well. So that's the first book. And then she decides, I'm pretty good at this. So that the next book will be coming out in March. And she and her buddy, a paranormal investigating hairdresser, team up to solve some mysteries.
I love it. You know what else I love, by the way? I loved your covers.
Oh, thank you.
You have these delightful, fun covers, folks. I'll squeeze a couple into the show notes, but if not, there'll be links. Go look at these covers. Go look at them where you can buy the books. Is a good idea, by the way. What I love about it is to my mind, you've really established a brand for your particular line here. And how much input did you have in the covers?
Everything. My cover artist, her name is Molly Burton, and she does a fantastic job. She sends out a questionnaire and you fill it in, but then really it is up to you to decide the colors and the theme. Now that's for the two mystery series, but the Pepperville series, again, I was new. I didn't know what I was doing. So I did an online contest for different artists to make a cover for me. So that's an actual artist drawing. And then the Franny Bell is another person. So those covers are going to be redone this year so that they're very uniform looking.
Yeah, I reskinned my whole series after the first three because I didn't make a mistake necessarily. I did and I didn't. Here's what I did. I went to a noted artist here in town. He was at the Art Institute and all that. He was a great artist, but not necessarily a great commercial book cover artist. Mm-hmm. And so the art was great. You could hang it on your wall, but it didn't really help me sell books very well. Right. And so I went to a guy, Jason McIntyre, who's also a very good author in his own right, actually. And he helped me reskin the whole series, and my sales just went way up, and it's all uniform and looks nice and all that. So it's good. Well, let's get it. So are these, what is the age range? I mean, are these, there's not YA, are they, or are they, or some of them you get YA?
I do have a YA that's, it's in something called Vella, Kendall Bell. It's an experimental program. That's all I have for YA. So everything else is women's fiction, empowering women's fiction, I'd like to say. Right. My characters range in age from 18 to 75. So very good. Yeah. I've got something there for everybody.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, they're just so welcoming. I love the cover and the work, and I love everything you're talking about, how they're made. It's good. The Bella, by the way, how did you feel about doing Kendall Bell? I did Kendall Bell as well. How do you feel about it?
I'm struggling with it. It's not doing what I wanted it to do, and I don't feel like I have a lot of time to invest in advertising and seeing what's wrong. So I'm a little frustrated with it. How about you?
I did this purely as a lark, just to see, right? So I just did something I wanted to do for a while, and I don't normally write this kind of thing, but I wrote kind of a dystopian, end of the world kind of Last Man on Earth kind of thing. It's like about 10 episodes, and it did okay. But then all of a sudden there was all these bonuses being handled out because I don't think a lot of people did Kindle Vella. And so they were like, we've got this pot of money, here you go. And I thought, but darn well that's not going to last. But it's definitely for a lark. It paid for it, but yeah, I don't think they know what they've got there, and I think they're trying to compete with Patreon and Wattpad and these other things. I don't know. They have probably a little more money than sense, as far as I'm concerned. That's why. So I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time on it. Since I've just got my last book published and I have no plans this year to write another novel, if I get an itch and I got some time, I might do it again there and just experiment with a different genre. But like you, it's just not at the top of my list.
Right. I don't foresee that as a money-making proposition. Maybe I'm wrong. And I have seen people that are very successful. Yeah. 100% sure how that works, but yeah, for right now, my focus is just these 3 series, and I'm happy with that.
I'm wondering if Kendall Bell is just like anything else. If you've got a platform and people just are hungry for something new, they'll go, which a few of mine did. But if you don't, if you want to go there, I would not say going to Kendall Bell to build a platform necessarily is a great idea.
Absolutely. Yeah. As you said, I just don't think it's well structured yet.
Yeah.
So the way it was sold to us was kind of, well, you just put it on here and you don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to publicize it, and there you go. And no, not come on, that's common sense. But I'm going to leave it there. A lot of people are pulling their stuff out and making their own stories, standalone stories with what they put in Vella. I'm not doing that yet. I'm just leaving it there till I have the time, which is kind of a joke, to actually do something more.
Joann, I'm 100% with you on Kendall Bell. Well, let's talk a little bit about the life of the writer. And you did tell us this. And again, how's your husband doing? Is he okay?
Yes. So every time that your brain stops, you lose, or I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Every time you stop breathing, you lose brain cells. And that happened to him 6 times. So he does struggle a little bit with his memory. And he always says that his thought process, he feels like the information comes in and has to walk through mud. So he's kind of, those things are a challenge for him. But, and of course, he couldn't go back to work. He was a train engineer for 36 years, couldn't return to work. But the positive that came out of that for him is that he has become an amazing photographer. He is an award-winning photographer also. So he does landscape photography, and there's such a wealth of subjects around here, waterfalls and mountains and you name it. So that's really been a positive thing for him.
I'm so glad to hear that, that he's also got this wonderful creative outlet as well. So what a wonderful household you two must have, the writer and the photographer. I love it.
It's wonderful to be able to support each other doing it. And that's something that we struggled with. So this is another positive about his accident, as we've been able to really learn how to support each other and help each other move forward.
Right. Well, and I know we don't have a lot of time left, but you've been very generous in expressing that you had some struggles with being supported growing up and into your adulthood, and you had some depression issues. And again, I think you and I could talk for hours about a lot of that. I think it's very, it's trite to say how brave of you to say it, but it is brave to say it, because I think what it does, particularly when a successful author like yourself can be open about that sort of thing. And I sense that if particularly a young woman writer were to come to you and express that, I imagine you could be very supportive of her. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I sense that. And I just wonder that, is it to a point where in your fiction, is it still, and do you think it always will be, a facet of what you'll bring to your writing is all of that? Or do you think you've got to a point in your life and your career where maybe it's there, but it's not kind of hovering over your work, just that sense, if that makes sense to you?
Yes. So yeah, I think you're right about it being there and not necessarily hovering over my work, because some of it, the earlier stuff, does have some darker elements. Yeah. But I do think that I've found some great medications to help me. And I think I have a better perspective, which, by the way, a lot of people say, oh, you go on medication and you lose your creativity. For me, it's absolutely the opposite, because it actually has given me some focus, and it blocks out some of the noise, and I can really focus on what I'm doing. So, and back to what you were saying about helping a young writer, I am on board helping anybody who's struggling with depression. I've been feeling alone, and know that you are not alone. That's the thing. Yeah. That's what I would like to help people do, because I've been there, and I know that you get to a point sometimes where there's nothing anybody can say to pull you out, and that's a scary place to be.
It's terrifying. It really is. And most people don't understand it. Most people, not most, but many people I've encountered over the years who they don't understand it, and it frightens them. Mm-hmm. And there's this misconception that, oh, just pull yourself out by your bootstraps, right. Or, oh, here, let's go to a movie, or, oh, what's wrong with you? You have no reason to be depressed. There's myriad reasons why people experience depression. Right. And there's a lot of people who think they're depressed, but actually misdiagnosed. They have anxiety.
Right.
But a lot of people don't understand that anxiety is not always like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Sometimes anxiety just causes you to what? Shut down.
Right.
And people think, oh, he's depressed. So I get that. I get that so much. And I just admire so much people like yourself who are just killing it. You're just doing a great job with your books, and you're getting the word out and being a beacon for people who need to hear, medication is good for you. If you were diabetic, you probably need insulin. If you have depressive issues, you probably need some of these medications. It is not a scarlet letter.
Right. That's something too that we have to get over. Is this is an illness. This is an illness. And if you have a broken finger, you go to the doctor. If you have a cough, you go to the doctor and you get something for that. So it's the same thing. It's something that needs to be treated. And sometimes that takes medication. And I wish, like you, people would just get past that.
Yeah. But it takes people like you to say that and be there. And, I've given some talks myself about it and explained it, and you do not have to be defined by your illness.
Right.
And you do not have to be defined by your childhood.
Right.
That does not mean you put it away like it never happened. But I just think people should work on not being defined by it, but using that stuff as propellant to get you through, to get you to the next level of health. And listen to me, like I'm just pontificating here when we're talking to you. But Joe,
that's okay. That's all important.
Well, and I feel that. So I want to, the time we have left here, where do we start? Brand new, everybody listening, Mysterious Goings On, where do we start for Joann Keder? Which series, which books?
So I would start with, if you're more of just a general fiction reader, I would start with The Story of Keela. If you really like those mysteries, I would start with Welcome to Piney Falls.
Okay. And they're all available
on Amazon.
And you can order them from any bookstore if you wish. And
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I encourage listeners to always go to your local bookstore. I mean, bookstores don't have a million shelves, but so they can't put every book in the world on them, but they certainly can order it for you. It might cost you a smidge more, but you're helping not only the author and you're helping the bookstore make a little bit of money, and you're helping yourself to get really good books, and encouraging people like Joann Keder and myself to keep writing, because that's what it's all about. Okay, so tell you what, if I checked in with you next year, what's going to happen? We're going to have another book under your belt, or two, or
no. I'm going to have three books. Jeez. And I'm participating in an author anthology this summer. So that's a short story. We call it a short story, but it's really, significant. It's about 25,000 words. So that and these other 3 books, and then we'll see what else pops up.
Well, I'm sorry you're so lazy, and you're not. You're making me feel incredibly lazy because I'm taking the year off.
Path.
Recharging is not always a bad idea. But because as I always say, people are tired of hearing it or listening to the show. But being a writer is like always having homework, and I just decided that my homework was not going to be my series. Since I put my series to bed after 15 years, I'm going to take this year and just see what happens and do that.
And that's really important too. You really have to give yourself that love, because everybody has their path, their own timeline, and yeah, as you say, and I forgot the point I was going to make. I think it's okay to just go at your own speed.
Yeah. And the good thing too about me not necessarily writing another mystery or thriller or suspense is I can read more of it, because when I'm in the midst of it, I don't like to read a lot of it because you don't want to.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess I'm going to add, thanks a lot. You've just added a few books to my stack by the bedside, but that's okay. Joann, I'm going to let you have the last word, because gosh knows I keep talking. So what's the last word before we say goodbye?
I would just like everybody to know that, first of all, as far as mental health goes, please reach out to, if your family members aren't supportive, reach out to a doctor, a nurse, a medical professional of some kind. Let them know how you're feeling. And this would be another whole show, but I told someone that I was suicidal, a doctor, and for a year, I didn't have any response from them. So don't just say, okay, well, then it must not be a big deal. Be persistent. This is for you. This is your health. Be persistent until you get the help that you know and deserve you need. And as far as my books go, I hope you read and enjoy them. And there's humor in every book, and I hope you can find the humor in every book, as opposed to the dark parts of it. But I think there's some really good mysteries that no one has ever told me they figured out the mystery in the first book until the end. So I hope that you will read, enjoy, laugh, maybe cry, and send me a message if you read something, a passage that you really enjoyed. Let me know. I believe my contact is on my website, but it's jketerauthor@gmail.com. Just send me a little note and let me know you enjoyed it.
Don't forget, just go to mgopod.com, and in the show notes, there'll be links to the books, and of course, joannkeder.com. And I believe that contact information, you'll be able to find her there. Joann Keder, I have enjoyed meeting you. I would just like to offer you an open invitation. If you ever want to come back and talk about something new, you know where to find us here on Mysterious Goings On.
I would absolutely love to do that. And this has been such a pleasure. You're such a joy to speak with. And thank you to all your listeners for listening today.
Thanks for joining us on Mysterious Goings On. Be sure to follow Mysterious Goings On wherever you get your podcast and never miss an episode. Don't forget, you can get the links to books and other things mentioned on the show at mgopod.com. Until next time, keep reading.